So what if I want to make a career out of project management? What does this entail? So what this talk is about is how do you get a position in project management? What kind of positions are there? What kind of industries are there? And also, how fast do these industries move along? You need hard skills. You need to know those components that we've gone over. When you can get positions in the triple constraint, then you have credibility. If you can't become a project manager right away, then think about the triple constraint. Do you touch finances? Do you touch how they allocate resources? Now you're in an adjacent position and can move over. Find departments that have project managers. And also, if you're customer facing, that's always a good thing. In this age of AI and all, naturally, people still want to talk to other people. So the opening positions are either junior project managers or project coordinators, depending on the industry, tells you where you're going to start. And what are you? You're basically a glorified gopher. Whatever the project, think about all the different components of project management. Well, this is where people start out, where like, okay, I just want you to track the CPIs or something like that. After becoming a junior project manager, you can become an associate project manager, which probably means you're going to be controlling an entire section, like risk or something like that. Next position is assistant project manager, and then there's project managers 1, 2, 3, and so on. Why do they do that? Because if I stay in a position for a long time, I want to be promoted. I want to be able to get a raise. Essentially, your annual salary boost is anywhere from 1 to 3%. But when you get a raise, that's when you can get the big jumps, like 10%. And so they want people to become project managers and stay project managers. And so eventually, though, project managers typically become program managers. The question about being a project manager is what kind of industry are you in? Do you build physical goods, or are you in software? Naturally, if you're in software, then Scrum and all the Agile techniques, that's what they focus on. Physical still goes by traditional project management. The product managers are basically mini CEOs. They control the product line. In order to execute those, they have program managers, and the project managers each have a little part. For example, if you're in electric cars, there's one project manager. He's just totally in charge of batteries, because the batteries themselves are a pretty big project to begin with. And so then you have other project managers, like one on motors or something like that. Everything is regulated. Getting a smog check, yes, that's regulated. And so therefore, that's why you need project managers, because somebody has to be able to take care of this. In terms of regulatory, you want to be able to get into positions that touch the triple constraint. Which departments do have PMs? And how do you connect and transact with the customer? And so in terms of regulation, those are the things I look for in people. Interestingly enough, everybody talks about how slow big companies are. But you're talking about very, very complex projects. And when you have something like that, they have more resources. So the little companies don't necessarily execute more quickly. When we look at how long things get done by sector, the energy sector takes the longest. And that kind of makes sense, because when you're talking about building power plants and stuff like that, and then the safety that goes on in that, and it's because when you talk about elements of power, now you're talking about not only explosives, but incendiaries, poisons, and everything else. What industries get things done the fastest? Naturally, it's IT, because all those guys do is push electrons around writing code and stuff like that. But here's a list that you can look through for yourself. The most regulated industries in the U.S. Wow, the longest one is related to energy. And even something as fishing is highly regulated. And that's because if you allowed everybody to do whatever they want, first of all, they'd be dumping pollutants into the ocean left and right. And not only that, but they would fish out everything. And so you also have to think about enforcement. A law isn't worth anything unless you're willing to enforce it. Now, some examples of physical companies where you're talking about Johnson & Johnson or Boeing, they're driven by regulation. And regulation is the forefront of everything they do and they have to think of. They're more closer to the classical model of project management. In terms of background, technical is the easiest, but PMs come from a lot of different backgrounds. And the thing about a lot of these companies is they tend to be over budget. And this speed issue creates problems like the 737 MAX. Now, less regulated industries, now you're talking about things like sneakers or commercial electronics, they still have regulation. Like if you plug in anything, if you notice, there's an Underwriter Laboratories UL tag on it to make sure you don't electrocute yourself. They're closer to the classic model. The big thing that you need to know as a PM is about outsourcing and procurement, because no company really builds their own stuff. A lot was made of Tesla because they were vertically integrated. And even Elon Musk said the only reason why he was vertically integrated is because he didn't have a choice, because these things didn't exist. But he would love to get out of lithium mining and stuff like that. Because in the end, what happens is every company is vertically integrated right now in automotive. Because somebody who's concentrated on just making tires is going to be able to do it cheaper than the company that is fully integrated. I said vertically integrated before I meant to say outsource. Anyway, the thing is, these companies, because they're less regulated, tend to be faster paced. They have shorter cycles. In terms of digital, here are some examples of what are digital industries. As you can imagine, AI is huge right now. Although, the thing about AI is AI has been around forever. It's been around since the 1950s. And what happened is AI had a jump in performance because of the larger computers and everything else. But they have to give it a new name or something like that. Examples of digital companies, they tend to be the least regulated. And the reason why is it's hard to understand, because it's so advanced, what the implications are on issues like safety and impacts on people and employment and things like that. And so the big industry that's having a tough time with it is actually biomedical, because these guys are used to, plastics and drugs and things like that. Now all of a sudden they have to worry about software. They don't understand it and they don't have the expertise. The thing is, these use more untraditional models, although the theory is the same. You have to understand the software development process. You cannot get around that, and that's why virtually everyone in this field has a software background. And naturally, it's much quicker because to complete tasks are easier, and they have short business cycles. So is certification worth it? Well, the thing about digital companies is you're going to have to get different kinds of certifications like Scrum and stuff like that. They respect those more than a PMP. These are the skills you need as a project manager, whether it's leadership or decision making, negotiation. These are the kind of things that we've talked about in terms of firefighting and all that's important. The thing is, to get into PM, you could be in the technical track, the marketing track, or the finance track. What it comes down to is, can you do the job? Do you have the skills list? Or do you have certifications that prove you have those skills? And what's the industry? The question is, what is the culture of the company? Some, the project managers play a very large role. Some, the project managers play a very thankful role. The big thing is, don't get stuck. Constantly be growing. Continuous learning and leadership. A real PM, what do? You firefight every day. Like two guys aren't getting along or somebody hasn't prioritized your work. You have to be the father confessor, meaning people who report to you, they all have problems, they're all going to complain, and they're all going to come and talk to you. I've known many engineers who have quit being managers because they hate being the father confessor. It wasn't what they thought. You have to negotiate. You have to give up something or try to come up with something that's win-win, and that's something that we don't really go over in this class. It's all about the triple constraint. And stakeholders, that's a big part of your job, make sure every day that everybody is happy. And so what it comes down to is project management, most of all, is a mentality of execution. Now, we talked a lot about products in this. If you want to learn more about products, in spring 2026, there's a course called Entrepreneurship. And what that class is how do companies create new products? What is their process and what's the execution behind that? In the first part of the class is we talk about skills. And so we go over things like negotiation and stuff like that. And then the second half of the class, I bring in guest speakers. And the guest speakers I brought in is Medtronic, which is the biggest biomedical electronics industry in the world. I invited a speaker, and she talked about regulation and how regulation drives everything that they have to do. I had a product manager from Apple come in. She's actually a former TEM student, and gave a fantastic talk about the mentality of Apple. And one thing Apple says is that we're not necessarily always first to market, but we will always be the best to market. And so with that kind of mentality, how do they make decisions about what products they make? Also, for those of you who are in aerospace, there's one person who talks about he spent a whole career in the aerospace industry making planes and selling planes, everything from little private planes to jumbo jets. And so we have a cast of interesting people like that, and I give a lecture called The Big Six, where I talk about the 6 industries that I've worked in, such as energy, the display industry, the automotive industry, and everything else. Anyway, because of the release of the MOT degree online, I think we're going to put this class online. Don't quote me on it. But for those of you who are on campus, this is a class, and you want to get into products, understand how products are executed, I would encourage you to go take that class.